Well, good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate your participation today, and I want to thank the people online. We have, I believe, a pretty good number of people who have joined us this annual PIANC USA section meeting. This is the second time we've held one of these gatherings, and the purpose is quite simple. We want to be transparent. We want to share the activities that are ongoing within the U.S. section of PIANC, as well as some of the international activities that may be of interest. As many of you know, or hopefully all of you, PIANC is fundamentally a technical organization, is built on the concept of having working groups who work with experts from around the world on various topics of interest to the maritime and inland navigation communities. And through these efforts, we put together the best knowledge, the best practices, and then share them with our membership. This is an activity that's been going on for 120 years, actually longer than that for PIANC International, but the U.S. section has been active in this for 120 years, joining in 1902. We had a commissioners meeting this morning to discuss the routine business of activities, and you'll hear the results of some of those discussions during this annual meeting. We will have a panel discussion. We're going to talk about a new initiative that PIANC USA is considering, and we look forward to the panelist presentations on that topic, as well as the audience participation on the idea and how we might shape it as we move forward. PIANC USA is doing well. We have a lot of activities coming up, and I think you will find the discussions today illuminating on how you can participate, as well as the opportunities for those you work with to also participate. So with that, I want to thank you for your time and for being here today. And I would like to introduce our opening speaker, the chair of the Board of Commissioners for the U.S. section of PIANC, and also the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, Mr. Michael Connor. So, Mr. Connor.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody who's attending today's meeting. I got to attend my first meeting this morning, and it was a very lightning discussion. And so I appreciate, Joe, your summary that PIANC USA is doing well. And from my observations, it intends to do better as we move forward with an agenda of a robust set of ideas and thoughts about how to, what I take away. So for those of you who don't know, I've been in my present job for about 4 months now, I guess between 4 and 5 months, as the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. And with that comes the chairing the PIANC USA Commission. So I'm just understanding the agenda, but I'm not just understanding the importance of waterborne commerce to our country, to President Biden's agenda, and to all the communities dependent upon waterborne commerce and activities. So, but understanding PIANC USA's role in advancing those interests overall and doing that on an international stage. This morning was my first opportunity to get a download about the activities that are in place to advance that agenda, and to really, as I told folks at the end of our session this morning, what I see is an organization with a long, obviously important history, but one that's trying to up its game in a way to strategically advance the interests of waterborne commerce for the U.S. as well as globally. And I think that's really important. That's what I wanted to just touch on because I think it fits a number of the priorities that we're working on within the Biden administration and myself in overseeing the agenda and activities of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And first of all, we need to acknowledge that whatever the agenda is, it's constantly evolving, and it's evolving because of the events that are happening on an ongoing basis. And it seems silly to say, but to acknowledge that world events are constantly changing our approach is an understatement to say the least. And quite frankly, from an energy perspective, what's going on today, given energy markets, what's going on with respect to Russia, Ukraine, and the impact that has on the availability of agricultural products worldwide, that changes the whole dynamic with respect to who's supplying what to who. And just in my past experience over the last 4 or 5 months, there's been a lot of discussion as I've been out to meetings with the Inland Waterway Users Board and a number of, I was on the Mississippi River last week as part of a Mississippi River Commission meeting, interacting with users who are dependent upon that important, the most important inland waterway system in our country, and talking about these same issues and how they're changing the dynamic about commerce on the Mississippi River. So I want to acknowledge that, but even in the midst of all those dynamic activities going on worldwide and how that impacts what we all do, this portfolio within the Corps of Engineers, the navigation portfolio, the work we do in support of our ports and harbors, as well as the inland waterway system, is just an incredibly important priority for the administration. And it's a priority that's demonstrated by the investments that are being made today. And I just want to give a little context for those investments. And these are investments certainly at the federal level that are rather unprecedented in this the resources that are available right now. But it's matched by obviously a lot of work going on in the private sector at the state, local level. Those investments, we're doing the work, particularly when we look at ports, deepening, widening, making channels safer, building capacity on our coast, as well as within the inland waterway systems. They're doing the improvements to the actual infrastructure necessary. And so I want to acknowledge that. But just to give you a little bit of context in the numbers game, we just rolled out our fiscal year 2023 budget last week. The Corps' annual budget is at historically high levels from a president's budget perspective the last 2 years. I think it was $6.7 billion last year, or $6.8 billion last year, and we rolled out a $6.6 billion budget this year, or for FY23. About 47% of that is allocated to navigation interests. So that's what we look at as a fairly robust annual budget. Congress thinks we should have a more robust budget than that, which is a good thing, although I have to say I support the president's budget completely and totally. But the fact that Congress writes in $8.1 billion, as they did in FY 2022, gives us additional resources to support the whole effort. So that's what we've got in FY 2022, about 20% more than the president asked for. And then on top of that, as you all know, we're getting into a point where we've allocated a lot of the investments from the bipartisan infrastructure law that Congress passed last November, $17.1 billion on top of the $8.1 billion. And then you add to that a $5.6 billion package that got passed I think in the September timeframe. The disaster response to Hurricane Ida, which certainly was all about making repairs, making adjustments in the aftermath of that disaster, but also shoring up infrastructure and doing long neglected O&M activities that we knew we needed to do that were accelerated because of the impacts of that. So you can see now we've got about $31 billion right now to make a lot of investments. A lot of that's going to navigation, inland waterways. And the context I just wanted to give you is that's the number we're working with now in the midst of what we look at as a, very good annual budget of $6.6 billion. So there's a recognition in the administration, myself, in this time frame, and it's driven by, I think, the Corps' leadership, General Spellman, General Graham, doing a very good job of making clear to be the importance of the navigation portfolio to the Army Corps of Engineers and to all of you all, and understanding the importance to this country from a lot of different perspectives. So I think I mentioned several visits on the inland waterway system, locks and dams, getting a lot of briefings, visiting 9, 10 ports. And from that standpoint and that quick indoctrination into this part of the Corps' portfolio, I see how it fits a number of the priorities that we've laid out, that I've laid out for the Corps, which I think reflect the President's priorities. I just really quickly wanted to highlight those. First of all, and our priorities are to upgrade the nation's ports and waterways, to foster supply chain, alleviation of supply chain issues and economic growth. Second is to build innovative, climate resilient infrastructure to protect communities and ecosystems. Third is to modernize the Army Civil Works program to better serve disadvantaged communities. Fourth is to invest in science and research and development to foster enduring solutions to water resource challenges. And last is to, of course, always important to strengthen our communications and the partnerships we have, because we do not do any of this alone. We do it with our partners at the state and local level, as well as with those in the private sector. So just a few of the things I want to mention that highlight the importance of specific examples that I see that waterborne commerce, ports, harbors, inland waterways serve these priorities. Economic growth, Panamax era ships, we're in a constant cycle now of deepening, widening harbors and a competition internationally. And those investments are incredibly important to continue to deal with supply chain needs, as well as just to foster our long-term competitiveness. And from that standpoint, you've seen the President highlight the importance of ports. It's a wonderful opportunity for the Army Corps of Engineers to be an important part of that overall set of portfolio and investments that are going on, and demonstrating the importance of the issues being addressed by Piank overall, and Piank USA in particular. Resilience, climate, I don't know where to start and end because of what I've observed in my tour of ports and the various different work that's going on. First of all, climate change, more energy in the ocean, the effect on coastlines. Obviously, everybody in ports and harbors industries are dealing with those issues. So I see certainly just the greening of ports. In particular, I'll just call out Corpus Christi and Long Beach as two that really struck me with respect to how they're greening their ports and reducing their own emissions impacts. But then it goes so much beyond that. It's people looking at and seeing the opportunities and where they want to specialize in markets of the future. Corpus Christi is an example. Hydrogen as an energy of the future, low carbon energy of the future. I see the investments we made in Puerto Rico to deepen, widen that harbor. That construction project is going to take place, which will allow Puerto Rico to transition its energy generation, electricity generation from diesel to compressed natural gas, cleaner, more reliant supplies. That deepening, widening project is going to allow those bigger ships to get in there and deliver that liquefied natural gas as transitioning their energy mix on the island itself. Then there's, of course, how we use dredge material, how we use the sediment that is so much part of these processes of maintaining these ports and harbors. And we're doing great work, and we're building coastal wetlands, and we're creating islands that have been eroded away with a new surge in energy in our waterway systems. We're creating habitats, we're sequestering carbon, and we're doing the partnership with the ports that we're doing that work in. And there's just so much more opportunity there. So there's a lot of ways that this portfolio will advance the priority and the resilience in dealing with the climate crisis. And last, I'll just mention environmental justice. From some of these ports, where they're located, the people they employ, the opportunities that they create, the goods that they serve to smaller, small ports, regional ports, those communities. It's incredibly important to advance their interests as part of an equity environmental justice agenda, and there's lots of opportunity to do that. with respect to the investments we're making now, to the work that you're all doing and highlighting the importance of waterborne commerce overall, and to learn on a broader stage what's being done in other places, other countries across the globe. So finally, I would just note, in doing all this, I've talked about a lot of investments we're making, and we're just at the start of that. So we will all be getting back to technical issues and not only highlighting and connecting through Piank to other countries, other organizations involved in this work, but also learning from those organizations. We face a lot of challenges now in our implementation, particularly in this day and age, whether it's cost of material, energy, workforce, labor, all of that is going to affect the execution and how we implement those projects and investments that I talked about that we're excited to make, but that we need to roll up our sleeves and actually do the work. And from that standpoint, there will be ongoing challenges from a budget perspective and containing our costs and doing it in the most efficient way possible. And this connection to others who are in the same boat, is that an appropriate analogy? I think so in this group. Then we'll help each other out in developing this overall aspect of our global commerce. So with that, I just wanted to highlight my appreciation for the opportunity to join this group to further these interests, how I see it fitting into the overall priorities that we have as administration, that we have at Army Civil Works. And from that standpoint, I will be more participatory rather than listening and educating myself than this morning, and this afternoon's meeting is part of that process. So I look forward to it. Thanks, Joe.
Well, thank you, sir, for providing that overview. I will say, not as the Secretary of the U.S. section, but as a Corps of Engineers employee, I look forward to the great opportunity, many challenges ahead, but the unprecedented potential to help the people of this nation. So thank you, sir. The next speaker we have is the president of Piank, as Mr. Francisco Leffler. He is calling in from his home in Spain, and I believe it's like 7 p.m. there. So, Mr. Leffler, are you online and speaking?
Mr. Leffler, can you hear us? Your line is unmuted. Can you try talking?
We're not hearing you, sir.
If you're dialing in on your phone, can you make sure that your audio is unmuted on the computer as well?
Okay. Can you hear us, sir? Yeah, he can hear us, but we're not hearing you. We have all our mutes off too, right? A minute here. We're not connecting.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you now, sir.
Okay, excellent. Are you going to project the slides, or should I?
We can advance the slides, sir. We have them, and if you'll just say next slide, we will move them forward.
Okay, excellent. Yes. Well, first of all, I would like to start with my appreciation to Honorable Michael Connor for meeting him virtually, and I hope soon we'll be able to meet him in person. My appreciation to the U.S. section of Piank for providing me the opportunity to address this annual meeting. and I hope to share activities in person very soon with the US section. Next slide, please. Well, I will start with a few figures about PIANC International, mainly addressed to those familiar to our association. But then I will continue with the summary of our present activities related to the challenge of climate change. Next, please. Okay, our membership today, we have 43 qualifying members, of which 27 have a fully developed national section. The difference between qualified members and national section is quite clear. National sections are strong enough to have activities by themselves, and that's the case from more than a century ago for the US section. We have at present about 1,800 individual members, and that includes the students. Not many really, but we have student members. We have about 500 corporate members. Our corporate members are authorities, chambers of commerce, universities, and all sorts of public and private sector organizations, from governmental organizations to all kinds of private companies. Next, please. Okay, our geography of our membership is as you can see. In the orange dots, we have members, but not territorial organizations. The light blue dots show where we have qualified members. That's one stage under the national section. And the green dots are the qualified members, the national section fully active. This is where we have a lot of presence in, obviously in North America, Europe, in East Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and we are growing very fast in the American continent. This means that our target is to consolidate the presence in the Americas and to grow in Africa, Middle East, and the rest of the world. Next, please. Amongst we have 11 partners that have a very special status. Amongst them we have companies, the Port of Rotterdam, Fender manufacturers, construction companies, and manufacturers of auxiliary elements as regard builds fibers for concrete. Our most recent members and partners are two construction companies from South Korea. Next. Okay. We cooperate regularly with many national and international organizations. And this includes the International Maritime Organization, the AMO, the United Nations Program, and international organizations. We have signed also memorandums of understanding with 15 sister associations. There you have the logos. Amongst them, I can highlight IAPH, the International Association of Ports and Harbors, International Maritime Associations, Ayala from Maritime Signals, and many others that work on area. With some of them, as ICLAC, for instance, we have prepared a joint report. With ICLAC, we published a proposal for classification of inland waterways in South America. And also with IAPH and IMPA, we prepared the joint report on navigation channels. Our most recent agreement regarding sister associations is with OSINF, that we are cooperating in our reports on oil and gas terminals. Next, please. Well, PIANC issued a declaration on climate change that I had the opportunity to present in 2019, the 10th December, in the roundtable on resilience that was held in the COP25 that was hosted in Madrid, although it was scheduled at the beginning for Santiago de Chile. Next, please. I will summarize a little bit the most relevant points because they show very well our agreed point of view for our association. First of all, is recognizing the real risk of climate change for businesses, to operations, for safety, for infrastructure, and all this impact that has to local, national, and global economies. We have to highlight, for instance, the case of small island developing states that are quite challenged with climate change. Then a proactive response obviously is required. Waterborne transport infrastructure, due to the contact with the water media to the sea and rivers, will be obviously adversely affected by climate change. In addition to the role in decarbonization, of course, decarbonization is very important for addressing climate change, but however, it is necessary anyway to strengthen the resilience and adapt to both gradual changes in parameters as sea level rise, temperature changes, as to the expected increase, that's a real phenomenon, in the frequency and severity of the extreme meteorological, hydrological, or oceanographic events we are seeing, unfortunately, every day more. Next, please. Then PIANC and members agreed to develop approaches for decarbonization, for port navigation, and cooperating from infrastructure to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from vessels. We have to recognize that after the efforts of decarbonizing maritime transport, there are a lot of infrastructure requirements, like bunkering and other associated facilities, just as electricity generation, for instance. Prioritize inspection and maintenance to optimize resilience, apply monitoring system and effective data management to support the action. Strengthen the operational resilience by developing risk assessment, contingency plans, and warning systems. Collaborate with energy, water suppliers, and many other agents in fighting this climate change. Of course, there are two words that appear after all these objectives. One of them is digitalization. That's essential for monitoring, for inspection, and for strengthening resilience by risk assessment and contingency plans. And the other is to recognize the relevance of governance in all actions that are addressed to climate change, because the actions by single stakeholders are not so powerful enough to address the huge challenge we are facing. Next, please. Yes, next, please. Okay. Yes. Then we have to seek for win-win opportunities. And then here takes the Working with Nature PIANC program relevance. Based on nature-based solutions, are the main tools we have to use to face climate change. Also, considering the range of climate change scenarios, later on I will try to summarize with a personal view. Focus on flexible and adaptive infrastructure system operations, and to avoid locking in solutions for the future, and promote resilience by technical redundancy. Of course, how is PIANC going to do this? Well, we will continue supporting the ports, harbors, marinas, inland waterways by facilitating what we know how to do, knowledge sharing through our working groups, our technical commissions, and preparing practical technical guidance via publications and our main events, just to have an effective result in managing climate change. Next, please. Then, additionally, we will contribute ensuring that waterborne transport infrastructure interests are properly acknowledged, because sometimes some modes of transport are more or less penalized regarding decarbonization. And also we will join forces with other transport infrastructure stakeholders just to meet those challenges. Next, please. Then, PIANC has a permanent task group on climate change, where the activity of the US section has been very, very relevant from the beginning. This is a permanent task group that's cross-commission. It's not directly linked to a commission itself, although it is coordinated by MBCOM. The chairperson of the permanent task group on climate change is Mrs. Jan Brook from the UK. There are 15 countries from all continents represented in this permanent task group, plus several partner organizations, as the International Association of Dredging Companies, IAPH, Ports and Harbors, ICOMIA from Marinas, Inland Navigation Europe, etc. Next, please. Well, the goals of this permanent task group is first inform PIANC on how navigation may be affected by climate change. Just gather all the available information and provide us the relevant information related to our field of activity. Also to advise PIANC on where and how these adaptation and mitigation actions are needed in order to ensure that the action and investment are properly addressed in a proactive way. And providing a common and basic platform to support all commissions, because commissions are specialized in their areas, in inland navigation, in maritime navigation infrastructure, or recreation navigation infrastructure. And then the support regarding climate change is done from this permanent task group. How can they do it? Just supporting the technical working groups on these topics, on the foundation provided by the already published TG3 report, facilitating something that's now in process. It is something that the US section received recently a call for designating climate change champions for the technical commissions, in order they can put directly to the commissions the climate change related topics and contributing to the ongoing work from this perspective. Also, participating and coordinating with other sectors and other stakeholders on these issues and responses via several initiatives that we will see later, and monitoring the navigation-related activities undertaken by other organizations. For instance, in climate change mitigation for vessels, that's an ongoing activity at present. Next, please. Well, the initiative Navigating a Changing Climate is a partnership that was founded by PIANC and with a series of strategic partners, as AAPH, Harbor Masters, Maritime Pilots, etc., Dredging, European Seaports Organization, just a lot of our stakeholders. And the Navigating a Changing Climate initiative has been working in shifting to the reduction of greenhouse gas emission and shifting to a low carbon maritime and inland navigation infrastructure, and acting to strengthen in the adaptation and resilience. It was launched by PIANC and led in the first years by our association, and recently at present, the leadership was taken by the Resilient Shift, that was initiative founded by ARUP and the Joint Register Foundation. So this Navigating a Changing Climate is going on with a lot of activity and a lot of health, and they were present at last COP26. Next, please. Also, PIANC is a strategic partner of the World Port Sustainability Program. It's an initiative set up by APH, by the International Association of Ports and Harbors, where other strategic partners are the American Association of Port Authorities, the European Seaport Associations, and the International Associations of Ports and Cities. The areas of interest of this World Port Sustainability Program are related to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and are digitalization, infrastructure, health, safety and security, environmental care, community building, and climate and energy. is a very powerful strategy that provides every year their awards, and we are very happy just to work together with IAPH in this initiative. Next, please. Well, from Piank, from ourselves, several of our working groups have been addressing topics directly related to climate change. The Task Group 3, TG3 publication, that was the first publication that gave room to the creation of the Permanent Task Group on Climate Change, was entitled Waterway Transport, Port and Waterways, a Review of Climate Change Drivers, Impact, Responses and Mitigations, and is our starting point in a systematized way to address climate change. Another reports that can be quoted is 150 Sustainable Port, that's a guide for port authorities. MVCOM Working Group report on the guide for applying working with nature to navigation infrastructure projects as promoting the nature-based solutions. Next, please. We have also Working Group report number 188, Carbon Management for Port and Navigation Infrastructure. The Practical Guide at 175, Practical Guide to Environmental Risk Management for Navigation Infrastructure Projects. 178, Climate Change Adaptation Planning for Port and Inland Waterways. That's an essential tool for facing climate change. Next, please. Also, the one on resilience of the maritime and inland waterway transport system is a very important document. And the introduction to applying ecosystem services for waterway transport infrastructure projects that adds the concept of the necessity to use the environmental resources of the seas with a renewal point of view. And very soon we will have an edition of the last paper from the Permanent Task Group on Climate Change, a technical note about managing climate change uncertainties in selecting, designing, and evaluating options for resilient navigation infrastructure. Next, please. Well, my personal reflection regarding all these topics is, first of all, that we need in our world of inland navigation, maritime navigation, and recreation, we need adaptable designs. There's a lot of uncertainty in the forecast of sea level rise and other variables due to climate change. Then we cannot invest for a worst case scenario and immobilize huge amounts of investment. We need to design in adaptable manner so we can start with the adaptation with a short range or mid-range forecast that can be more accurate. So our design must be ready to be adapted to the different evolution that we can expect in the variables that characterize the climate change. Also, probably the societal demand from those responsible for waterway transport infrastructure is changing in this moment. In the past, we were required essentially to design and build safe and cost-efficient infrastructure. Just be compliant with standards and recommendations that ensure safety for the society, but doing that at the lowest cost possible. Today, things become more complex. First of all, by considering the life cycle cost of the infrastructure. It's not only designing and building at a reasonable low cost, but taking into consideration the life cycle cost of this infrastructure. To answer the question about resilience, how does infrastructure respond beyond standard or normally foreseeable design conditions? This is the question society is posing to us every day when the extraordinary and terrible and extreme phenomena, hurricanes, tsunami, and tornadoes come to the existing infrastructure. Society obviously forgets that that was designed according to certain standard and hypotheses. But society asks, well, how does this respond? How can this be back into service fast? So resilience is now a key for design. That, of course, requires the integration of the lessons learned. Lessons learned are every day more relevant for hurricanes, from tsunami, for all kind of extreme events. In the US, I think all we have in mind the cases of hurricanes Katrina and Sandy and the lessons learned. Another question that's extremely relevant, and it's a common fact with the effect of the pandemics, is the consideration of governance as a tool for facing all these kind of challenges. The pandemics, just the same as some climate change consequences, put in high stress storage capacity and the capacity of all the logistic lines and all the logistic network. I think these kind of challenges can be only addressed by a common effort of all stakeholders just going together and taking profit of the capacities and the possibilities of each one of those involved in the process. Next, please. Well, and this was my personal reflection. Of course, you can follow PIANC International. PIANC US is a very important part of PIANC International, so don't lose the opportunity to have close relations with all your colleagues all around the world. We are in the social media. Next. Also, we have our website, and I have to announce all you, although secretaries and commissioners know that we are developing a full membership management software that will change the website and all the relations of PIANC, facilitating a lot the relations with the organization for all our members. And next, please. Well, we have our upcoming events that also will be announced to you later. That will be the Smart Rivers Conference in Nanjing. That will be probably a hybrid conference. The World Congress that's expected for March 2024 at Cape Town in South Africa, North PIANC. The PIANC America 2023 conference at Fort Lauderdale, that of course the US section is organizing it, and will be very, very important for the consolidation and extension of PIANC in the Americas. The COPEDEC, the Asia Pacific Conference organized by the national section of Australia and New Zealand, and also the Mediterranean Days. That's a regional conference for Mediterranean countries. Next. Well, I want to thank you for your attention, and just to remark that I am available for all of you, either for questions if you want to pose some question, or for any other question you want, or by email, or etc. And then state again my appreciation to the US section for having this opportunity to address to you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much.
Still muted. Okay, maybe I'm unmuted now.
Yeah, okay,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, good. Third time will work. It's all in our end, sir. I want to thank you for your comments today, and I appreciate you joining us in the evening from where you're located. The global time zones no longer matter. We can do everything virtually, though my sleep clock doesn't always agree with that. But sir, I want to thank you for your time. I was very impressed by the discussion about what Piank is doing in the climate change area. It's quite extensive. It's needed. And it seems to me you're touching on all the key points, which I would expect no less, given the insights the people working with Piank are involved with. So, sir, I want to thank you very much for your participation today. You have agreed to be with us at a session at the Ports 22 conference that I'll come back to in a little bit. where we'll actually get to meet in person, and I look forward to that opportunity.
Of course, I will be there in person as I compromised. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. That brings us to the next section of the schedule, which is a presentation of some recognitions. A year ago, PIANC US commissioners recognized the importance. Maybe that's not fair to say they recognized. They already knew the importance, but they realized that additional recognition was due to the people who donate their time, their energies, and their talents to produce the reports that come from the working groups that PIANC are associated with. So an initiative was begun to recognize those people who served on a PIANC working group and completed or published the report during the past year. We have 15 that we are recognizing today. Only 2 of those are here in person with us, though some of them may be joining us online. But irregardless, I'd like to recognize all, and for the ones in person, I'd ask you to come to the front, and we'll make a presentation of the certificate that we're making available. So the first one, if you'll just move this slides, is Gary Brown, working with the saltwater intrusion mitigation in inland waterways. So Gary, thank you. Next is Rigoberto Delgado, same group, saltwater intrusion mitigation in inland waterways. The next one is Timothy Paulus, small hydro power plant in waterways. Timothy is here with us today. So I'm going to ask Mr. Connor to make the presentation. So I just learned that there's the other person is not here with us today, so there's only one. So yeah, thank you, sir. But he left me up here all alone. Timothy, well done. Thank you very much, and everybody got to see what the certificates look like. So next is Al Cofrancesco, introduction to applying ecosystem services to waterborne transport infrastructure projects. Next is Catherine Chambers. Same topic, introduction applying ecosystem services. Next is Ashabar Jacob, planning for automation of container terminals. Next is Pekka Ranta for the same publication. Next is Bart Vermeer, same publication. Next is Thomas Ward, same publication. Next is Stephen Edwards, same publication. Next is Alexandru Duca for the same publication. Next is Darren Honecker, same publication. Next is Anthony Otto, same publication. Next is Scott Peoples, the same publication. And finally, Todd Tatterson, again for planning for automation of container terminals. As you see, these are team efforts, but everybody's contributions is why they turn out to be such good products. So with that, I want to thank all of the people who contributed to these published documents, and for all of those in the room and online who are working on publications at this time. So with that, round of applause for our recipients. The next item on the agenda is for me to give us an update on what PIANC USA is involved with. I mentioned the commissioners meeting this morning. We covered the usual business items. We have a budget that's doing well. We are looking forward to being able to support young members in their participation of activities as they come up. But I think it's the activities that are in planning that are of greatest interest to everyone. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. It was previous slide. I thought there was one in the middle. My mistake. Sorry, Shady. The two webinars that are upcoming. The first one's on beneficial use of sediments. It's a Piank working group report. Burden Sudell is going to be leading that presentation. It's going to be held on the 28th of April. And if you've not signed up for it, I encourage you to do so. You can go to the PIANC USA website to find the information for registration. It is a free webinar, but you're encouraged to register so we know who to participate. We have another webinar planned for the 15th of June, Port Resilience Guide, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agencies report. And that is not yet posted for registration, but it will be on the 15th of June, and I hope that you will mark your calendars. When you go to the website, I hope that you see a number of changes if you've ever looked at our website before. We have brought on board a communications group that's helping us with marketing. They're changing all sorts of marketing, including our LinkedIn account, our website, our email correspondence, our paper correspondence, and they're helping us attract attention to the opportunities that Piank has. If you receive these materials, I hope that you're not sending them directly to your junk mail, but I do hope that you will share them with others and encourage people to see the value of being involved with Piank. Certainly being a member of Piank is a key part of that, but I would be very happy if people just joined us for our webinars and for our sessions to learn more about us. And I think from that, you can make up your own mind about being a member of Piank. There's a lot to be offered, and I encourage you to share that information. We will grow, and we will expand, and we will provide greater benefit only through your interactions with your friends and colleagues. Upcoming events, we have the annual General Assembly, which is the annual meeting of Piank International. That'll be in Liège, Belgium from 30 May to 1 June. Information is starting to be posted on the Piank International website. I encourage you, if you're interested, to sign up for that. There is an event called Ports 22. It is a conference being co-hosted between the American Society of Civil Engineers, COPRI, which is the Coastal Oceans, Ports, and Rivers Institute, and Piank USA is a co-host of this event. Though most of the work is done by COPRI, I will give them the due credit. We have a number of events that will be occurring at the COPRI at the Ports 22 event in Honolulu, Hawaii, in mid-September. We have a training session on tsunamis that will take place the day prior to the first day of events. We will have a session where we're bringing together Mr. Leffler, who you just heard from, the president of the Japanese section of Piank, the president of the South Korean section of Piank, a representative of the Canadian section, as well as somebody from the Australian section and the U.S. section, in a panel session to discuss the maritime challenges that are facing the navigation industry moving forward. So I would encourage you to participate in that. And there are a number of sessions that are discussing various working group reports that have been published. And I think you will find those of interest as well. So if you're interested in signing up for the Ports 22 conference in September, you can go to the Piank USA website and we'll provide you a link, or the original link is located on the COPRI website, and you can Google to find that. The next event that we have on our calendar is the Piank America Conference. This is the first time that this is being held. It's being hosted by Piank USA. It will be in Fort Lauderdale in April of 2023. The call for papers is out and available. It closes on the 1st of June. I encourage you to consider participating. The purpose of this conference is to bring together representatives of all the Americas, whether it's South America, Central America, or North America, to discuss areas of common interest to all these different parties. And I encourage you to consider participating. I encourage you to consider submitting a proposal for a presentation. I think it's going to be extraordinarily well attended, and we will keep you updated when the registration formally opens. The other topic that we are in deliberation over is something called Smart Rivers 2025. Now, Smart Rivers is a Piank international event. It occurs every 3 years with a location rotating in various geographic regions. Typically rotates between Europe, North America, and the Asian theater area. This year, it's being held in China. The next opportunity will be in 2025, and the PIANC USA section is making a proposal to host the 2025 Smart Rivers event. And the topic will be around 100 years of the Mississippi Rivers and Tributaries project. This will be 2025. The Jadwin Plan was first proposed in 1928, so it's almost 100 years. It's close enough to hold a conference. So we are looking forward to setting this up. It would be somewhere in the Midwestern United States. And if you're interested in learning more, you can contact me or whoever the contact is that you find on the PIANC USA website, and we'll get back with you. At this point, it's still in the proposal stage. It's not been formally accepted by PIANC International, but we'd encourage you to, if you know anyone, to suggest that that is accepted. The last item is an emerging event. And the emerging event is what the panel session that's going to follow is going to discuss. And this is the recognition that, well, I'll use the term small ports and harbors, though that may not be exactly the right term, that they continue to struggle with increased continued economic growth, and in many cases sustaining the growth that they have. And to do this, they need assistance from industry, from government, whether that's local, state, or federal. And the idea of PIANC USA interceding in this is to bring together, to hold regional summits where we can bring the parties together to discuss ways forward, be essentially a facilitator. Now, there are other groups, IRPT, in the rivers, ports, and terminals, who do something similar to this. And our goal is not to compete. There's plenty of opportunity. But to look at opportunities where there might not be coverage, or maybe partner with people. But we believe that this is an area that could use assistance. Some of these may be disadvantaged communities in some way, and if we can provide meet that goal, that would be important. It's certainly on the priority of the President of the U.S. So we're looking at that possibility, and we will discuss more on that in a few minutes. I will close with what I opened the session with today. I believe that PIANC USA is well. I believe it is doing good things. It is still trying to expand so that it has the interest and the numbers of people to make the message communicatable and to make the message robust. So I come back to something I said earlier, in that your participation and your sharing of the opportunities that PIANC offers is how we succeed. The events that we hold are just that, they're just events. But this is about technical knowledge, but it's also about networking and connecting people. So I look forward to the opportunity for PIANC USA to do more of this, and I look forward even more to your assistance as we move forward with these activities. I can stop at this point and see if there are any questions or clarifications before we move to our panel session. I don't know if anybody online has their chat box open. No questions. Well, either I'm clear as mud or boring, or I answer all the questions well, and I'll leave it to you as to which of those is the correct assessment. Yes. Okay. I was just reminded that in my rush to move through things, I overlooked some of our recognitions, and I do apologize. That's probably why the slides are out of order, because I was out of order. The first we'll go to is Kayla Waltermeyer. She is not with us, not in the room today, but Kayla was serving as the deputy secretary and was promoted this past fall into a new position and moved on to other things. Hamda Zaire who you'll meet in a second, has been filling in for Kayla until we brought in a new person that'll start on the 1st of May named John Clarkson. So it has been a rotation of folks as we move through the activities, but they've all done a great job, and I appreciate all they're doing. So to Kayla, who I still see quite regularly, my thanks and my congratulations on a job well done. That brings us up to Hamna Zaire. And Hamna has done a terrific job. She's organized today's events and done all the coordination for what we're doing. And we do have a recognition for Hamna. Hamna, if you would like to come forward, sir. Okay, thank you, Hamna. Next, we want to recognize some of our departing commissioners. Their tenure ends on the 30th of June. So the first one to bring up is Jessica Mcintyre. Jessica was unable to join us today, and I don't believe she's online either because of a work commitment. But Ms. Mcintyre is a waterfront structural engineer at Moffitt & Nichol, a global leader in waterfront planning and design, specializing in planning and design of recreational and multi-use waterfront development projects. Her 20-plus years of experience comprises concept development and feasibility, market economic studies, grant applications, and implementation, environmental permitting, evaluation and repair of existing facilities. Jessica is a waterfront structural engineer at Moffitt & Nichol. She's been actively involved in Piank for more than 15 years, serving as U.S. First Delegate and later Secretary of the Young Professionals Commission. She's a licensed professional engineer in Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, and received her degrees in civil engineering from North Carolina, NC State, and a master's degree in civil from the University of Florida. So with that, I want to thank Jessica for her tenure and for all of her contributions. She's been an extraordinarily active member of the commission. So thank you, Jessica. The next person whose term will end on the 30th of June is Nicholas Panzik. Nick is a vice president at Stantec's Energy and Resources business line located in Chicago. Over his 42 years career, he is committed to planning, design, construction, and major water resource infrastructure programs worldwide. His areas of expertise include waterfront development, dam design and rehabilitation, inland and maritime design, navigation, design of navigation locks and dry docks, shoreline protection and enhancement. He has a bachelor and master's degree from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. He's a registered engineer in Alaska, California, Illinois, and New York. He is a diplomate in navigation engineering, which is certified by the Academy of Coastal Ocean and Ports Engineers. And I should also mention that he currently serves on the Piank Executive Committee, the XCOM, as a vice president. So with that, Nick is in the room, so I'd ask you to come forward, sir. Thank you very much. Would you like to say a few closing comments?
Thank you for this recognition. I've been a member of Piank since the 90s, I guess, and was pleased to serve as a commissioner of the U.S. section for the past 8 years. It's a great group. I've learned a lot, met a lot of great people, and encourage all the younger members that may be on the meeting today to invest some time in Piank and contribute your talents, and it will help you grow in your career and become very successful and make our industry a lot more successful as well. So thank you very much.
So the next item of business is a friend of Piank who recently passed away, Ed Schmeltz. And he's well known to many people involved with Piank, and Nick knew him well. So I'm going to ask Nick to go ahead and say a few things about it.
As Joe just mentioned, the Piank family lost one of its dearest members with the passing of Ed Schmeltz on March the 9th, about a month ago. His contributions to the profession, the global maritime industry, and Piank were significant, and he leaves a legacy that we could all be proud of. Ed was a native of Chatham, New Jersey, graduated from the New Jersey Institute of Technology with a BS in mechanical engineering, then saw the light and earned his master's in civil engineering from Texas A&M with a specialty in coastal and ocean engineering. He contributed his expertise on a global stage with major projects in 21 states, 37 countries, and working on 6 continents. He worked on U.S. Navy shipyard projects at Kings Bay, Georgia, and in San Diego and Pearl Harbor, and on international projects in Qatar and Panama, just to name a few. Throughout his busy time, he found time to serve our profession, garnering the prestigious Opal Award in Design from ASCE. He was a founding member of the COPRI, and he was a member of the Moles, a fellow of SAME, including a past president of the New York Post of SAME. Ed joined the PIANC USA Board of Commissioners in 2013 and served admirably until 2021. For PIANC International, he served as vice president for the Americas and as co-chair of the Coordination Commission, bringing his talents to a global stage. PIANC is a stronger organization today because of Ed's selfless and meaningful contributions. On a personal note, I first met Ed in 1995. We were collaborating on a project opportunity down in New Orleans. He was with Frederick R. Harris at the time. I was with Harza Engineering Company. We didn't win the contract, but I definitely came away from that encounter with a lifelong mentor, friend, and respected colleague. What I really find remarkable, though, is how little I knew of Ed's personal side. I didn't know that he was a private pilot. I didn't know that he drove a Porsche, or that he played golf, or that he liked to tinker around the house, because it was never about Ed. It was only about the work and the profession. And although he did occasionally brag about the Aggies and about his grandkids, which I will allow. His support of young engineers was particularly evident through his service on the board of his former college, NJIT, which awarded him the Lifetime Alumni Leadership and Alumni of the Year awards. So again, to the young professionals in the audience, you couldn't find a better role model than Ed Schmeltz. We miss him greatly, and he's always in our hearts as a guy who did it right.
Okay. Next item is to talk about the PIANC America Conference, which we are hosting. So with that, I'm asking Calvin Creech, who is the lead organizer, I could say, for this event to come forward.
All right, thank you, Joe. Yeah, so we're really excited about this initiative and the upcoming conference, the PIANC America Conference. You can go ahead to the next slide. This is a conference that really brings together the various qualifying members and national sections throughout the Western Hemisphere. And as Joe Manos has mentioned, really having an opportunity to share technical experiences and to really collaborate on shared challenges and just understand some of our various context and perspective within the Americas, within the waterborne transport community. Go ahead to the next slide. This is part of a larger initiative. This is an initiative that was developed by the PIANC International Cooperation Commission, the COCOM, to develop a PIANC America initiative, which has the following 4 goals. First, to provide opportunities for the enhancement of professional development of the members within the region, to strengthen America's leadership within PIANC, and no, that's not just USA's leadership, that is the American continent, North, South, Central America, and the Caribbean within PIANC, and get more involvement throughout the region as well. Certainly, USACE and USA as well, PIANC USA as well. And also to disseminate best practices and guidelines on port infrastructure and waterway development throughout the Americas. And finally, to also increase the recognition of navigation as an important component within integrated water resource management, key aspect within many countries, especially in South America, Pacific Northwest, and other regions as well. Go ahead. So the PIANC America Conference is, again, a regional conference tailored to the Americas for the needs and challenges of waterborne transport in the Americas. The idea is to host this conference every 2 years, rotating amongst various national sections and qualifying members throughout the region. And again, PIANC USA stepping up for the host of the first conference. The dates will be April 24 through 28, 2023, and it will be held in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And the other exciting component of this conference is that it will be combined with the International Young Professionals Biennial Technical Visit, the BTV, which is also being organized by PIANC USA Young Professional Commissioners as well. Next slide. So we'll be held in Embassy Suites in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, a great venue that can host a conference of this size, provide great facilities for not just the conference, but additional activities and happy hours and entertainment, etc. And also really strategically located very close to the Port Everglades and a very convenient location, because that is also the location where the biennial technical visit will be focused at Port Everglades. Next slide. The conference theme is sustaining ports, waterways, and marinas through a changing climate. I think it was great to hear from President Loeffler, navigating a changing climate. That's certainly a major theme of this conference as well. We have with us Mr. Jim Walker, who will be the chair of the conference. We have a website. We encourage everyone to go to our website, get more information for this conference. Absolutely encourage everyone to submit an abstract. Abstracts are open now. We've been receiving a lot of abstracts, and we want to make sure your technical project, your initiative, maybe a working group that you worked on, can be highlighted and presented at this conference as well. So please definitely encourage you to go to our website, PIANCamerica2023.org, and submit abstracts there. And there's also sponsorship opportunities available as well. So if your company is interested in sponsoring, that's also an opportunity available. And then registration will also be coming soon, and we'll be providing more information on registration soon as well. Go ahead, next slide. The conference sessions will include certainly our 4 technical pillars of PIANC. So Marcom with maritime ports, Incom with inland waterways, Reccom with recreational marinas, and NVCom with environmental sustainability. But then also some other areas which are very specific, certainly within our community, and also specific to the region: dredging opportunities and challenges, navigation locks, waterborne transport in the Americas continent, alternative energy in maritime transport, as well as climate change as part of our conference theme. Benefits of attending, submitting an abstract, and registering for the conference. Certainly there'll be networking opportunities within the maritime and PIANC community. We'll have opportunities to share technical successes and presentations. We'll have keynote speakers, including President Loeffler, among others. There'll be a reception dinner hosted, as well as other social activities. And also we'll be able to provide professional development hours, offer professional development hours, PDHs, to attendees as well. So again, we encourage you, please go to our website, get more information, encourage you to submit an abstract, encourage your colleagues as well. So with that, we'd like to thank you, and certainly if anyone has any questions, please feel free to contact me. You have my contact information here as well. So thank you.
All right, let me review the schedule, make sure I don't miss anything else. That brings us up to our panel discussion. We talk about the new initiative that I had mentioned before. So with that, I'd like our panelists to come forward. So the topic of this panel discussion is this idea of holding a summit for small and regional groups to discuss the pros, the cons, the opportunities. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. We certainly welcome comments from the audience online as well as here in the room. Our panelists for today, we have on the end, Jose Sanchez, who is the Deputy Director for R&D, or still is, but will soon be moving, we believe, to the Pacific region. We'll see. But a Corps of Engineering employee. Next is Jim Marino, who is the President of Taylor Engineering. Next, we have Ron Heffron. He's the Senior Vice President for Energy and Marine at Greencom. And then we have Ron Cole, who is Coles, is a principal of W.R. Coles and Associates. Those are our, and Nick Panzik to be here, see him. So we will go with 4 panelists. The topic is, or the question for the panelists to start with is, if we consider this idea of a summit to be facilitated by PIANC USA, what are your thoughts on holding such a summit, the strengths, the opportunities, and also the challenges that we should be concerned with? So why don't we start with Jose, and then we'll go to Ron Coles and kind of work our way back to the middle.
I think the topic is of value to not just the government, but industry and state and local governments as well, right? That manage the ports. And also, the court does have a special position in all this in service an integrator. So it's common for the court to bring different parties together, allow for discussion on these type of topics, especially when it comes to ports and navigation. So I think that for us, I think the interest is really high. It would merge some of the technical components, but as well as policy and regulations and procedures are associated with the topic. So I think we definitely are interested in moving this forward and gaining the interest from our partners and stakeholders. Over.
Okay. Thank you, Jose. So Ron Coles.
My expertise and background is primarily on the inland navigation system. And as our country developed, many ports and terminals on the inland system, and I'm talking about primarily the Mississippi, the Upper Miss, the Lower Miss, the Arkansas, McClellan Kerr, the Missouri, the Ohio River, Tennessee, Cumberland, Tin Tom system. A lot of ports were developed when things were not as developed as they are today. And so the challenges when ports need to expand or a new terminal needs to be located is the challenges for physical terrain as well as urban or other types of development, and how to coordinate all that. And then there's been discussion also of the recreational component of the use of waterways and how to coordinate the recreational along with the sustenance of our energy and agricultural and industrial sectors that are heavily dependent upon water transportation. So how do we do that? Who plans? Is it metropolitan planning organizations or regional planners? And do they really have the expertise and background and consider the waterway needs and waterway interests? Not only on the water side, but if you have a big river port, you've got all these inland connections with how to get the commerce to and from the hinterland. So somehow this could perhaps help reach out and help those planners understand the issues better, possibly create other resources for them or networking opportunities for them in the future planning.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. Let's go to Jim Marino.
Thank you, Joe. When I first thought about this topic, I thought more from a historical perspective. So when you look at the 246 years we've been a nation and how it evolved, and the history of actually mankind, the maritime industry was how we actually moved all of our goods, our people, our goods, our services, everything moved by water, or, horses, donkeys, and carts. That's how we moved our commerce and people around. Then what was natural, of course, was that we always went and looked to land that was connected by waters, but that provided safe harbors more often than not. We looked for a piece of land where that water offered us protections from the elements. And that became the natural places to evolve our ports and harbors. So as I looked at the PIANC USA mission, as opposed to, we have a mission to support PIANC International, but then when we started the topic of, but what should we be doing for PIANC USA? And I think it's an inward look of, how do we take care of the rest of the nation? So our large major ports, of course, are dealing with our international contributions directly. And, you know, then over time, those smaller ports and harbors from 246 years ago, as we evolved as a nation, and even before that, what happened is then human nature takes over. And it looks at those facilities and, well, that's where the populations tend to aggregate around. And so those populations needed all the other commercial, industrial, recreational facilities to go with how those towns, cities started to evolve and grow. And what we've now grown up with after 246 years is we actually have a great deal of conflict, and we owe it to the rest of the nation to not just focus on our major ports and how they contribute to our economic welfare, which is important, but as PIANC USA, we owe it to the rest of the nation to see how do we integrate all those other community needs up and down, whether it be the internal waterways or our coastal waterways. What we have, if you look out on any beautiful Saturday or Sunday afternoon, what you have is major shipping channels that are all controlled regulatory by the Corps of Engineers. It's responsible for the safe navigation of all of our commerce. But what you have is kayakers, sailboarders, paddle boarders, and everything in between that and major shipping is in conflict, because as all those neighborhoods have grown up around those major ports and harbors, well, what you have is people who also want to live there. They want to fish there. They want to recreate in those locations. And so we have a duty to try to organize from a comprehensive planning standpoint, something analogous to metropolitan planning organizations. So as we decided that we know how to move away from horse and buggy, we now have cars and trains and the rest of that move people. And those people all want to go to a water environment to enjoy Saturday and Sunday. And there's a tremendous amount of conflict. And I think we have a duty to reassess how our major ports have to work in concert on all of our waterways with all of the other potential users safely.
Okay, thank you, Jim. So Ron Heffron, your thoughts?
We're living in an era of significant change. Climate change is one of those. The energy transition to a greener future is another huge change. It offers a lot of opportunity for ports, particularly small ports, but there's also a lot of technical challenges that come along with that. I view this sort of a forum of gathering small ports to understand their issues as an opportunity for PIANC to become involved, learn about the issues of importance to the small ports. Maybe it's funding issues, maybe it's grants that need to be defined and sought by the smaller ports. Maybe it's technical guidance on things like sea level change and more severe storm issues that have to be dealt with. There's a host of technical issues that may be very important. And it's an opportunity for PIANC to listen to the small ports out there, whether they're inland waterway or coastal ports, understand what the issues are so that we can better define our services and the working groups, the technical working groups that need to be formed to address those issues.
Jose, go ahead.
Just to add, and I think it also provides the opportunity for PIANC, in this case PIANC USA, to share some of the technical knowledge, the wealth of knowledge that's been produced in those working groups through the years that maybe some of the small ports have not been exposed to, right? So it allows for that technical exchange to understand the requirements, but at the same time, hey, maybe there's some past practices that already can be implemented in use, and maybe you guys could go ahead and implement in your own ports. So I think there's that exchange, I'm not aware of any other venue that has allowed that exchange to happen specifically for that group of people. I think that would be of great value. Over.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the first question, then we'll read any that are in the chat. I don't know if we have any, but and this really kind of goes back to what Jim Marino was saying, and then Ron Heffron maybe took a little different tack, and that's kind of why I'm asking. And that is PIANC USA's role in this. Is it to be an educator? Is it to be a facilitator? You could say it's all of these things, but that sometimes it makes it difficult to figure out exactly where you fit. And I just ask for your thoughts about PIANC USA in this space operating. What should be its primary focus? And Jim, you kind of start off. I'm interested in your thoughts.
Thank you, Joe. So I do think first, PIANC USA's role, and again, because again, Congress has said that this organization exists for a reason. And so if I take that it starts at that level, again, so the leadership has a duty to reach out to those communities and say, is there something better we can do? And listen, which is what Ron said. Sorry, Ron Heffron said it. We have two of them. And so I would think that we would establish the forum to listen. And again, on something more like a regional basis, because this nation is so large and the dynamics are so different many times that, you know, whatever technologically we solve one place doesn't necessarily work in the next place. But I think, I see sort of a regional approach. Again, not terribly different than regional planning organizations or metropolitan planning organizations around our nation that deal with issues in that context. And then if there's a way to share those great ideas that are translatable from one region to the other, great. But then if it's possible to reallocate, so at the end, if it is then becomes clear that we could potentially reallocate resources to those communities that makes us more functional, safer, then that's a role we should play. Because again, Congress said that PIANC USA will be established and operated in this manner. And so I do think it has a duty to the rest of the nation to try to support those needs if they're out there.
Okay, thank you. Ron Coles, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on this topic.
But certainly agree with trying to listen to the water, not just the waterways community, but the urban planners or state planning community. And that goes all the way to the state DOTs. And it could be the siting of a transportation corridor or a bridge, but how does that, to be sure that the navigation interest would be considered by just bringing that to their attention. And again, a lot of focus might be on the landside access to ports and terminals. And in different parts of the country, from our experience, in the south and southeast seem to be more mid to late 20th century development of port authorities that might have jurisdiction. The upper part of the Ohio Valley, industrializing earlier, there are many more private terminals that weren't organized under any sort of a port authority, but they're private terminals. And so they don't have the same kind of a voice necessarily to speak for them collectively. Nonetheless, they're vital to the sustenance of those communities economically. So I think part of it would be listening, what could PIANC bring to the table? And I know in recent years, the Ohio DOT has gotten very involved in their ports, both on the Great Lakes and the Ohio River, but perhaps we could facilitate something there to integrate this into not river planning or river port planning, but bigger than community planning. Statewide, looks at resources, how best to use those going forward to serve all those needs, whether it's recreation, commerce, or just passive beauty, scenic areas. But a lot of it reaches into the landward side of it. I think that's got to be considered.
That's good. So, Ron Heffron, did you have anything else? This is sort of building off what you started there.
Yeah, and if I elaborate a little bit further on what I talked about earlier, it's and kind of drill down a little bit on one aspect is this energy transition and the opportunities that it offers to ports. The U.S. is lagging Europe, and we have something to learn from our global colleagues. But there is a tremendous shift going on, particularly in Northern Europe, to a hydrogen economy, to shippable fuels such as ammonia or e-methanol or others. And I think it's going to offer, and it's also a shift away from the fossil fuels that might be handled in some ports. And with such a transition, it's also the ships that are changing their fuels. It's not just power. It's also industries and power generation. This is going to be a couple of generations at least for the world to embark on this green transition. And I think the opportunities that come with that and challenges are an opportunity where Piank can really step in, PIANC USA, and try to define a little bit more granular what those challenges are and where Piank can fit in. Again, it's a listening exercise to hear the concerns of ports, because they will be quite different, whether it's a riverine port, a southeast port versus a California port, for example.
Okay, thank you. Jose, I don't want to leave you out, but you had
You guys covered it all. It's hard to come after these guys. No, in reality, I mean, it is, again, you ask about we're facilitators, leaders, whatever. I would say the listening component makes us more a facilitator than anything else. And I think that's the biggest bang for the buck in this. And then I'll agree with Ron, and there's an environmental justice component to this as well that has probably not been discussed before in these kinds of forums. How those small harbors and those small ports have an impact on those underserved, underserved communities. So I think there is an opportunity there as well to bring that to the discussion in these forums.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if someone else has a question. Anybody in the audience in the room have a question you'd like to pose to the panel? One down front. We'll get your microphone so the people online can hear.
Sandra Knight, for those that are online. When we started talking about this topic at our last meeting, it really kind of was generated from this discussion that our small waterways are pushing out local cultural, social environments and that have been sustaining these people and these cultures for years, and that these waterways like the Atlantic Intracoastal are just becoming the waterways for the rich and famous for your sailboat and your yachts. So when I'm thinking about this, I wonder what Piank's role is in designing inclusivity and preserving a social culture. So what do you think about that?
The discussion actually has gone to Piank all the way, I would say world Piank, because the inclusion of some of these not as developed countries and economies in Africa, in South America, and so forth has been a main focus of Piank for years now. And I know COPEDIC, which is involves a lot of the South American countries, has been trying to help them out in developing these the economic viability of these ports and waterways in their countries, and utilizing some of the lessons learned from Europe and other countries to help them out in moving forward. That kinds of lessons learned are, I think, vital for some of these small harbors and ports that may not know what is the overall impact that I could have. What is our economic case, if you will? So there is the myriad of things that impacts not just in the vicinity of that port, but out in the community. I'm not so sure that it's as well known, and I think Piank has quite a bit of wealth of knowledge in that topic area.
Go ahead.
Yeah, great leading question, Dr. Knight, really. So I think what it leads to is we have a duty to serve first, right? So if we have a duty to serve first, and we were born out of congressional authority to learn. So I think exactly what you said. So we have a duty to go out there, listen, and then say, hey, we have an issue, and prioritize those issues so that those can be brought back to the powers that be, that then say, we need to lend some help, support, whatever it may be, in whatever manner it may be. Because so exactly what you said. So we initially said we have the Intracoastal Waterways, and we define those things, and they're regulated by the Corps of Engineers. Every bridge you see going over has a Corps of Engineer castle on it, where it's part of the navigable waterway, the waterway itself. But it may come down to, as you said, so we design those because here's what we think we need. We need 10 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet, 50 feet, based on what we think the nation at the highest level has to do. But now we recognize that because we did that to some degree, all of these other ancillary operations now occur on those waterways. So you're right. So now I can build a 250-foot or 400-foot boat that loves to use that 15-foot channel that was originally designed because of the commercial industrial need of the US. And oops, now it gets in the way of, so the guy with an 18-foot boat, not an 18-foot draft. And then folks who want to kayak and everything else. And so then it's a matter of maybe we need a different model that says, that's the, so again, and it's not, I don't have to look at it, it's actually identified this way in the transportation authorities is, so, so let's say the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway is in fact M95 as far as the transportation authorities are concerned, right? So it's just like I-95, but it's for waterways. So what are communities that are connected by intrastate highways, what do? Well, they go, hey, we have all of these other roads, highways, local community highways that tie into those, and they have to talk about how do we do that correctly? Do we need a parallel path for these others? And do we need to go ahead and bite the bullet, go ahead and do that? And again, exactly how? I'm not going to the end of the problem. Maybe that's where it leads us is, so maybe we need ancillary, a different way to mark our channels, because right now all we care about is the one that federal folks and the Coast Guard, right, want to monitor. But the community is sitting there begging for, can we get support to, how do we tie in all of our local canals, waterways, all those other things so that we can do this safely? But we have to mark them, no different than you would mark a regular transportation highway and how you link all of those. So I think PIANK, so the question was, how does PIANK USA, why should it care? Is because we have a duty to serve. It's the whole nation, and you're supposed to go to the lowest level first and work your way up. You're not supposed to shove it down people's throats. At least that's what I've learned. That I think that's why that would be a role for us to go out and say, how might we do this better?
Yeah.
The example of the inland waterways is an interesting one. We have a different social justice issue that we deal with on the left coast, and that's the issue of air quality, particularly in places like LA. For the last 15 years or so, the two big ports in Southern California have been scrambling to get the support of the communities, and they've had to buy it, basically. It was an 8-year moratorium on any project being approved in the Port of LA, for example, while they came up with a new plan, a Clean Air Act, or a Clean Air Plan that both ports adopted to not just clean up the air, but also to create space for the community to connect with the waterfront. So it's a different issue, but it's all the same sort of social justice issues that all ports need to grapple with in a different way in different parts of the country.
Okay. Does anybody online have a question?
Yeah. I was just about to mention, catching up with some of the chats I think is very relevant. There's one comment and one question in the chat that's relevant to this conversation as well. So James Costello notes that it occurs to me that the recreation and navigation needs may be complementary in a world economy. The more diverse the uses, the more stable the growth of that region in the long run. So one comment there. But then also a question to the group from Heidi Moritz to follow up on some earlier statements referring to community resilience. Consideration of positive actions for small to intermediate ports should step back and reevaluate how value is calculated for communities and regions. Are we currently recognizing the value sufficiently? And if not, what may we be leaving out?
Question on values, how we recognize them. Please, Jim.
Yeah, so it's a great question. And absolutely, so this isn't an engineering problem, right? It's a community problem of all of the bright minds that are out there, right? So, I would submit that that's a great question. I wouldn't know how to answer it because I need economists and the rest of those folks that actually know how to determine that value. Should be part of the equation it should be part of the discussion without a doubt. Again, so metropolitan planning organizations, as they decide their 5-year plan and 20-year plan for major road transportation and rail transportation needs and even air, they do have to take into consideration. So what happens if, and there's a certain value added, otherwise, why would you make that investment? And this is America. We don't do anything unless, we find an angel investor or somebody to put money up front. And then you hope that achieves the desired end state. So yeah, I see it as, it's definitely multifunctional. It's not just an engineering problem. The environmental stuff alone is absolutely essential to be part of the equation. So the financial part as well has to be.
Concept of comprehensively evaluating all the benefits comes to mind as being the challenge. Ron, you were going to.
Different conversation that they didn't like an either or choice, but kind of a, how do we make this all work? And it just made me think the accessibility, again, I'm thinking of the commercial side and the social justice and all these things we're talking about. But the fact that, and again, on the inland system, an inland river barge holding the equivalent of about 70 trucks worth of material, and you push 15 barges at a time. Now that's over 1,000 trucks. And if you're looking at President's goals of energy conservation and reducing air pollution, water transportation does that on the inland system. So if water transportation is beneficial, the converse, if water transportation access went away in a community, and if you did not lose the jobs, but whatever's creating those jobs is still there, whether it's manufacturing or agriculture, you are going to have more than surface transportation coming in to move the raw materials in and the goods out, or moving the grain to either national or global markets. So anyway, I think that it's a great question. And from our experience, there's and you mentioned MPOs, which I think is good. Usually they'll have expertise in of course, in the roads, but they'll get the rail involved because there are fewer rail companies to call, and they'll be involved. The air and the water, from our experience, is usually the last thing that's kind of considered. But to try to somehow get that to the table, and Piank could be, I think, a great venue because it's, I don't know if quasi-governmental is the right term, but created by Congress. And so maybe well accepted if it were offered. Because I think there may be communities that need this. They don't know they need it because they've never had it, and sort of an afterthought to some of the planning. So anyway, I hope that makes sense. But if it goes away, it's not good. And right. It could be that there's issues with having, commercial as well as recreational or urban development grown up. But it's a holistic approach. We've got to keep water at the table.
Okay, thank you. Let's take one more question from online, if there is one. Comment.
One more comment from online, from Jim Taylor. One value being left out is how the tonnage is accounted for coming out of the ports by USACE. Tonnage reporting is mandated by law from Congress, but it is accrued by reports by transport, not by ports. Until this is standardized and all tonnage is reported, the value to the economy surrounding the ports will never be accurate.
Have insights on that?
So the only insight I have is I've tried to navigate finances now for half a career in the military and half a career on the dark side, is that pretty much all economics is fuzzy math. But then again, most of the rest of the world would say that engineering is fuzzy math too. So we know that it's very difficult to be accurate with everything that we try to calculate at those kinds of magnitudes. So it's not a bad question, and I don't think that the question poster is wrong, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't continue to try to do our best to get closer to the right answer.
I can just offer one point that on the coastal ports, we do collect the information from the ports. That's because of taxation ad valorem. But you're right, you're absolutely correct. On the inland waterways, we collect it from the transporters. And it's a long process that the Corps of Engineers has been charged to keep track of, or at least attempt to keep track of and report. We will capture all of the chat comments in the for us to take a look at later and see what else we can do with it. If you're looking for a particular response, if you include your email address, we'll see what we can do about responding back to that. With that, I want to thank our panel. Thank you for your insights and some very thoughtful comments today. I appreciate that. There we go. Okay, hopefully people online can hear me now. We're going to get started. The next portion is back grease on the or the status updates on from our principal representatives to each of the PIANC commissions. And the first one up is the Marcom, Maritime Navigation Commission, which will be presented by Ron Heffel. So Ron.
Just tell them, okay. All right, good. Okay, so we're going to talk about what's happening in Marcom. So first, I'll introduce the Marcom team from the U.S. I'm the principal representative, and Richard Stiles is our alternative member. Chris Thomas, also with COE, is our young professional, and Ed Backlund is our YP observer, and Ed is with Hatch. Next. So some of the significant achievements recent times is kind of excited to announce that we just formed a partnership with the Oil Companies International Marine Forum, known to some as OCIMF and to others as OCIMF. So what that means is we're going to be cross-pollinating and collaborating more closely. We have been collaborating on quite a number of working groups in the last 2 or 3 years, and we decided to formalize that and make it a formal sister relationship. So as a result of that, Jeff Bayham of ExxonMobil has now been appointed as a representative from OCIMF to Marcom, and I've been appointed as the representative from Marcom to OCIMF. So we'll be attending each other's meetings and identifying, for example, what working groups are out there existing, where each other's members can participate, and what working groups do we need to form to meet unmet needs of the industries that we serve. Okay. So I want to start by just highlighting some of the new reports that will be published this year. There's a lot going on in Marcom. It's a pretty exciting time. We've got a lot of reports in production. So the first one highlighted here is 153B. I happen to chair this one. It's recommendations for the design and assessment of marine oil, gas, and petrochemical terminals. We published a predecessor document in 2016 that was recommendations for the design and assessment of marine oil and petrochemical terminals without the gas part. Now we've added very comprehensively LNG and floating LNG and single point moorings and multi-point moorings. So this is kind of an all-encompassing document. It's about 400 pages long now. So it's been quite the effort. A group of about 35 members actively working on this one. And we're at the finish line. We've just got to put, we've got some comments that we received from OCIMF, and they were our blue ribbon panel for this document. And we're putting the finishing touches on it, and we'll publish in the next few months. The second one is Marcom 211, Guidelines for the Design of Fender Systems. So this has been in need of an update for some time, so we're really happy that it will be hitting the production circuit later this year. And then there's the Framework for Early Contractor Involvement in Infrastructure Projects. This is a new initiative, kind of a different twist for Piank to take on, really focusing on project delivery methods, and in this case, ECI, or Early Contractor Involvement. So there's a very comprehensive draft written mostly by attorneys that work for contractors. It's now in the process of being reviewed and edited rather comprehensively, and they're racing to try to finish this by the end of the year. Next one. Marcom 200 is recommendations for the design and assessment of marine single point mooring and multi-point mooring facilities. So I mentioned earlier that PIANC 153, the group that I chair, is covering SPMs and MPMs. The way we have orchestrated the interaction of these documents is the 153 document will go up, we'll take it through concept selection, and then the detailed design aspects, the specifics of the design, will be covered by Working Group 200. So we've coordinated our efforts to make them mesh nicely together. Then we have 167, which is the design of terminals for RoRo and RoPax facilities. And then 211, oh, I think I already covered 211. Sorry, I put that in there twice, for the design of fender systems. Next. Then we have quite a number of active working groups. So most of these are well along their way. There are some groups that are newer towards the bottom of the list, but 164 is the upgrade of port terminals by increasing dredge depth, which is a common problem we find in ports around the world. Then there's 171, ship handling simulation dedicated to channel and harbor design. 180 is guidelines for protecting berthing structures from scour caused by ships, which has been quite an issue as these container ships in particular have gotten enormous. They've got bow thrusters or double bow thrusters that put out quite the kick, and have caused a lot of damage on the armored slopes, for example. So guidance on that. 185 is site selection and planning for new ports and specialist marine terminals and greenfield sites. And then we have 186, mooring of large ships at quay walls. 187 is protection of undersea pipelines and cables in navigable areas. This is a document that's needed not just for example, oil and gas type facilities, but also for offshore wind, where we've got a lot of cables now coming to shore, and we need solid guidance for the design. 199 is health monitoring of port and waterway structures. 205, design and construction of breakwaters and soft seabeds. This is a really focused topic, but it's a challenge faced in many parts of the world where you're trying to build a breakwater in soft soil conditions. And there's a lot of specific recommendations provided for this scenario. 212 is criteria for acceptable movement of ships at berth, which is an update of a previous document, and that one's well underway. The chair is a U.S. member, Majid Yabari. And then Working Group 213 is design guidelines for marine multipurpose terminals. Next one, please. And then a few others that are in the works, and some of these are the newer ones. 224 is planning of fishing ports. 225 is The seismic design guidelines for port structures, which is an ever-evolving topic, and this is the latest iteration of particular interest, particularly to the West Coast ports, but also globally. And the Japanese, of course, are very active on this one with us. 231, mooring bollards and hooks, selection, maintenance, and testing. 232, med-ocean-related risk during construction of marine works. That's a really specific topic of great interest. We have a lot of, especially in Europe, we have a lot of contractors who are strong supporters of Piank. And it's really nice to have their input because they've been requesting specific topics. And this is an example of a topic that is really useful to contractors. 233, inspection, maintenance, and repair of waterfront facilities. So this document is a comprehensive design guide, or not design, but a guideline for the inspection aspects of waterfront facilities. And it's an update of an existing document, but it'll be quite comprehensive. 235, ship dimensions for planning and designing marine infrastructure. And then lastly, guidelines for the use of BIM and infrastructure for ports and waterways. Next, please. And then we have a handful of newly formed working groups. One that's, all of these don't have numbers yet, but they're just in the process of forming, which is an opportunity if folks who are in the audience and online have an interest in participating. Now is the time to contact PIANC USA to express your interest. There will be calls for members coming out on these. So the first is the design, maintenance, and sustainability of container terminal pavements, which is a big problem in many container ports as the equipment loads that are repetitive cause problems with pavements. And pavements are one of the biggest costs in container terminal projects. Guidelines on onshore power supply ops for ports, for ships and ports. And then safety by design and execution of marine projects, best practice, another contractor driven project. Okay, I think that's the last. Oh yeah, summary is we're very active. There's a lot going on and it's very productive. So we always welcome further participation of our USA colleagues. There are opportunities not just on the new groups, but in some cases on the existing active groups. So if you're interested in getting involved, please raise your hand. You can always contact me or PIANC USA directly. Suggested topics are particularly welcome. We're always looking for to understand what the needs of the industry are and to be able to respond with documents that are well done and timely. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ron.
You bet.
Appreciate it. Next, we have the Recreational Navigation Commission, RecCom. Mark Perello is giving this presentation, and I think Mark is online. If I'm
that is correct. Good afternoon.
we can hear you fine. Please.
Okay, great. That's always helpful. In the world of Zoom calls. Thank you. Can you next slide, please? So just as kind of an overview, as we've kind of discussed each of the committees and the groups, Esteban Bionde is the international lead for RecCom. He's actually here with ATM in South Florida. And then John Armbruster with Taylor Engineering is the principal representative, and then myself is alternative. Just prior to the pandemic, we were seeking a replacement for a young professional YP representative, and we're still actively seeking that participation. So that's an open vacancy. What we can is having reached out to different people in industry to express interest in this, and so as kind of a call on this as well, is if you're interested, please reach out to John or myself in terms of being engaged with this group overall. So I look forward to that participation in the YP membership. Had it in the past, and I think is a critical element to the RecCom group overall. Next slide, please. So prior to, I think our evidence, we were progressing very well as a group, moving through the last couple of years prior to the pandemic, and we were producing publications pretty much on a annual basis. And then things kind of slowed down in the last couple of years. So, the things that we had published right at the beginning of the pandemic was the single point yacht mooring, something that was an evolution of what had been developed earlier in the 2000s and then evolved into this. And so we have something now that has a good guidance in terms of both planning and execution for this type of mooring system. So overall, well. And then another thing that is probably discussed in general terms in the group as overall is kind of managing that relationship between recreation, navigation, and commercial ports as part of Recom Report 147. So this is, again, kind of collectively taking information and providing some general framework and guidance on how to manage that relationship, especially in heavy use ports and where recreation is taking into different areas and co-locating. Next slide, please. And so trying to get the momentum up after the slowdown is now we have a significant amount of active working groups. We had a kind of a load case of terms of references around 2020 and 2021. So we got a fair amount of active working groups engaged. And we're progressing on this. We're also trying to streamline as a group overall, where we see things that are slowing down or not progressing at a pace to kind of revisit those working groups and try to see if it's sustainable or to close it out and direct our focus on the ones that keep progressing along. So with that in mind, Working Group 148, which I think was just keyed into a conversation just we had during the panel discussion or a comment from online. It's just looking at sustainable recreational navigation infrastructure, both from a social benefit considerations and how it evolves, and as well as taking that context in from an environmental perspective as well. And so that is progressing well. We're right on the final draft, and so we're very close to going into publication at this stage. Working Group 149 is a multi-volume publication. It's actually 5 volumes, of which 3 are published. 4th is almost done, and 5 is slowly getting toward its conclusion. So we've put a fair amount of effort into this working publication just because of its impact overall in the group, and so that's moving forward. Working Group 169 on the utility side of considerations on fire system detections in marinas. Again, we have a draft that's developed, and we've kind of focused the group again to get this worked through at the end of this year. So that's on target right now overall with where we're progressing on drafts. On the flip side, Working Group 182, we had some general discussions early on about great terms of reference for this, got it engaged in terms of underwater acoustic imaging as part of Working Group 182. But I think over the last couple of years, we haven't made any significant progress on it. And again, kind of as that refocusing, we're looking at potentially closing this out and getting participation from the working group members into other working groups overall. Next slide, please. Working Group 202, again, the influence of recreational navigation infrastructure on waterfront projects. This is another publication that is well into draft stage. And so again, our target this year for this one as well is to publish and get into publication by the end of the year. So that's progressing well. As we get into Working Group 203, and you can see a theme as we work through these working groups on how we look at the social benefits of the recreational community on the waterway system. Again, a theme that we talked about earlier. We're working on this. This is a cross-pollination between INCOM and RECCOM. And we're actually providing a representative to that. Identified a couple of individuals that are interested, and so we're working through that to get that progressed forward. Working Group 209, which is the use of AIS data, taking what we know from the ports in the commercial craft and identifying that information and looking how it can be used for supporting the recreational side of function, obviously, depending on the size of vessels. And so we've actually moved forward with that, have a draft position paper. And so depending on how it's going to be published, I think that's a discussion we're working on through now. If it'll be a special paper or it's going to be a technical report. That's part of our monthly discussions right now and where that may be. Working Group 217, again, something that obviously from conversation and discussion on climate change and how we look at propulsion systems for recreational vessels. And the rise of electric recreational craft. And so we're again in that process of drafting publication at this stage. Again, our goal is again for kind of this progression of publication by the end of this year. Next slide, please. And then on these remaining working groups, and we get into inland waterways, infrastructure, and tourism. That one's just starting out. Our objectives there as the working group as they progress is really to start on the case studies portion of it and kind of work their way backwards and providing that guidance. And so it obviously crosses three different groups. And so we're producing those case studies now, and that will help to create our framework for the other publications. So that's underway right now. Working Group 220, again, on the utility side, in terms of sanitary pump out systems and gray and black water. That's one, and we'll kind of walk through these next three where we've identified leads. And we're just one from participation in U.S. Representatives, as well as our participation from international members have been a little bit challenged in the last couple of years just because of the global situation. So we're actively trying to move these three publications, WT 220, 21, and 22, forward right now, or I say 21 and 20, move forward right now. So those are something we're actually trying to work through to get active memberships. Again, if anyone's interested, please reach out to John and myself. Working Group 222 is probably one where we can benefit from the fact that the work that's been done by ICOMIA and others, and as well as COPRI here in the U.S., and trying to blend all those knowledge base together, floating breakwaters and marinas. And so this one is progressed fairly rapidly, and we're showing good progress. So something we're looking forward to seeing toward the end of this year as well, and something that's very apropos for a lot of facilities. Again, kind of an off branch of things that other organizations are working on, and we hope to provide strong guidance in advance of those. And then Working Group 223, we have a chair appointed. I'd like to see some cross blending with some of the work, or maybe opportunities for cross pollination for something that Ron did on one of his working groups. But right now, we're trying to look at how that the fishing community kind of blends into recreational facilities. And again, we're looking for participation on this one. We have one member right now, and so it's on a slow path and looking for more assistance, both the U.S. and international. Next slide, please. In terms of, with our focus on trying to get these initial publications, the group has worked on just one in terms of reference right now, and it's actually something that I'm kind of spearheading myself. Is kind of this lake management or carrying capacity of waterborne recreational activities on lakes, so looking more on the inland topics, and so we're drafting that in terms of reference right now to move forward. And add that to the publication. And then our upcoming events, I think as a whole, the Recreational Committee now is meeting the second half of 2020 and beginning of 2021. It was a little slow in terms of frequency of meetings. There's a fair amount of span. So now the group is now more or less virtually meeting on a monthly basis. And so that's some of this energy and synergy we're getting to getting things pushed out through the end of this year. There's a couple of things that we're working in partnership with our international partners, and then some of that is that dry stack technology workshop that's planned at METS coming up here shortly. So we're trying to blend that in with some of the other topics that are in that type of relationship with dry stack movement and storage. And then there's a webinar planned here coming up at the end of this month in about 2 weeks on WD 217. It's been fairly organized on the international side, but we're looking to see if we can get a U.S. participant engaged in that right now. And I think the other thing that's probably not highlighted in this slide and that we're moving forward is that within PIANC USA, we were having at least once a year webinars, and we had one successfully in 2020 and identifying one in 2021, and we're seeking to get that engaged so we can at least have one on, if not biannual, at least maybe every 6 months or once a year. So we're working on that as well, and actively seeking some topics right now. Next slide, please. The Marina Excellent Design Award, the Jack Nickel Award, something that's been engaged in and working through for the last more or less 20-some plus years. One of the key things to this award is getting participants, public and private facilities to submit applications. And generally, it's been fairly routine prior to 2020 with the changes in world economy with the lockdowns and such. We just haven't had the amount of applications and participants. Last year we had one, so we're still working at best ways to advertise it. We've worked internally with publications here in the U.S. as well as overseas to get it, the announcements out and at each conference that both at PIANC and other conferences to highlight it. So we're again hoping this year we'll have enough applications to review and present the award. Next slide, please. And just kind of as a summary, and I've probably already highlighted this once, is we're just working on getting more participation from the U.S. PIANC USA on some of these working groups. As an overall, Recom is very diverse, especially from an international committee, and we've been able to gain membership there. We're working harder to, the more broadcast participation here overall. So that's one of the things that John and I are targeting for this year. And I think that goes along with what SBON's been trying to do as an overall committee. And so that's part of our goals this way. And then again, as a kind of an announcement, to the overall group and those on this call, again, from the Marine Design Excellence Award, if you know of a facility, both public or private, that meets the criteria and is interested, please let them know, or please direct them to the committee, both internationally or here in USA, for information. And it summarizes where we stand today.
Hear me now? Okay, thank you, Mark. I appreciate the presentation. It's very interesting. Well done. Next up, we have the Environmental Commission, Envicom, by Burton Sudell. And I would just ask the speakers, we need to keep the presentations to about 10 minutes. So we're going to run over our schedule. So Burton, I turn it over to you.
Hi, thanks, Joe. Just a quick sound check.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Great, thank you. Hey, everybody. I'm Burton Sudell, the principal representative to the Environmental Commission. I'm a research biologist at the Army Corps of Engineers Engineer Research and Development Center. So if we can go to the next slide. Here's the leadership of Envicom. Todd Bridges remains our chair. along with myself, Victor McGar, and I are representatives to NBCOM. And we had a vacancy last year for YP, and we have rectified that. So we're pleased to have Andrew McQueen as our YP representative, and he's done a great job of helping us organize and communicate within the commission, and we appreciate his contributions right off the bat. Okay, next slide. I was probably, the second most excited person attending this afternoon when President Loeffler showed a lot of the covers of many of the recently completed working group reports in NBCOM. And so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on these. So I appreciate President Loeffler sharing that information with us. Obviously, fairly recently, a lot of the working groups and their associated reports have focused on climate change in particular, and then more broadly, this concept of sustainability. And so I think we've got a great track record of publishing a lot of reports that are related to climate change, including publishing a report related to and communicating more thoroughly the working with nature philosophy of Piank, and then talking about climate change adaptation coming out of the Permanent Task Group Climate Change Working Group 178, carbon management, resilience of the maritime and inland waterborne transportation system, and then including applied ecosystem services. So, okay, next slide. We have seven active working groups, and they've been very active. I think the pandemic has slowed us down a little bit, but we've been making some great progress in some of these. The beneficial sediment use working group 214. I was pleased to get a call out from Joe earlier, and hopefully everyone can participate and listen in on the Piank webinar on April 28th on that particular subject. Other documents and reports that we're working on related to sustainability reporting, best practices. There's other emerging environmental issues related with waterborne transport infrastructure, including the implications for invasive avian species, the effects of underwater sounds, which is an emerging issue globally, and of course, what we've been working with for a number of years, particularly with the Army Corps of Engineers and a number of our districts in particular, is managing environmental restrictions on dredging and disposal operations. Okay, next slide. We have a couple of newly formed working groups. I'm pleased to announce we do have continued calls for the implementation and funding of nature-based solutions, including the waterborne transport infrastructure sector. But time and time again, we have issues related to funding and to cost. And so it makes a lot of sense then to stand up a working group to work on a report on how we can better attract green funding for these types of projects. A lot of our navigation structures, and we're developing a terms of reference for this, they do a great job of achieving, their intended engineering function. But some of those structures, even incidentally or accidentally, create a lot of other benefits associated with them, including environmental. And so that working group that we're going to stand up shortly is going to talk about how we can increase the benefits associated with those structures. We've already heard this afternoon about this QUAS commission collaboration, and we really strive to do that within NBCOM, and so we appreciate the outreach with the other commissions. But one of the things we cannot, I think, realistically have an NBCOM member embedded in all appropriate working groups, and so we're developing a terms of reference to develop guidance for overarching information that would be used potentially by other working groups to understand how they may be able to incorporate environmental issues into their working group reports as appropriate. Okay, next slide. Working group collaborations, and we heard some good collaborations that were going on in Recom just a couple minutes ago. So that's great to see that. I'm simply going to pile on. And so I think these cross collaborations, I think there's an awful lot of information and learning that can be gained by doing so. And I would simply encourage us to continue doing that and perhaps doing more of that in the future. So 2 INCOM working groups that NVCOM members are actively working on is 203, Sustainable Inland Waterways, and Management and Operation of Low-Use Waterways. We also been involved with Recom 148. NVCOM and Recom a couple of years ago had a joint meeting in Brussels before they stood up Working Group 148. And so we're pleased to provide input in a review capacity on that particular report as it works its way towards publication. Okay, next slide. And so this is my last slide. NVCOM continues to remain active. COVID-19 has honestly slowed us down, but I think overall we continue to make really good progress. The Permanent Task Group on Climate Change has just announced that they're going to be meeting in person for the first time in over 2 years in June in the UK. And I would anticipate and am hopeful that NVCOM would follow up with their first in-person meeting in over 2 years shortly thereafter later on this summer. The pursuit of the webinar series collaborations, I think is bearing fruit, as already mentioned. We've got the webinar on April 28th, and so we're looking forward to that event. That certainly won't be the last time that we'll be pursuing webinar series collaboration. So we look forward, we're working with PIANC USA going forward on that initiative. We're continuing to pursue joint working group opportunities with the other commissions and organizations. And so we look forward and we continue to look for those opportunities for cross-fertilization and cross-knowledge. I think will greatly improve the working group documentation and the reports that come out of that. There's an awful lot of good learning that can take place across the commissions. And so having participated in that myself, I can say these are great learning opportunities from a professional perspective. The opportunities to participate ongoing in upcoming working groups. And so we have other terms of reference that will show up during next year's annual meeting. And I look forward to reporting on those going forward. And lastly, we see creative ways to leverage working groups. That's true not only but within PIANC, but also amongst the commissions, but also outside the organization, are the ways that we can work closely together with CEDA, for example, the Central Dredging Association, and the Western Dredging Association, WEDA. And so, for example, for Working Group 214, we do have our representation for those other working groups on our working group report. And so that really helps and then provides value, brings value and content, and I think improves the final report that we're going to be published. So that's all I have. So I appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Burton, very informative and very well delivered. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Next up, we have a presentation from in the room, Inland Navigation Commission, INCOM, by Mr. Jose Sanchez.
Hey, Inland Commission, of course, it is the best commission of all. I'll let you know, right, Sandra? She knows this. The Inland Commission, I'm the Deputy Director of R&D for the Corps here, Deputy Chief Scientist, headquarters. So I've been in part of PIANC for 20 years now, thanks to Sandra. First Congress was in Australia, Sydney. Next slide, please. We have myself, as principal, and Brian Chetrol, who's also a ERDIC. He's a ERDIC CHL employee, actually ex-Coast Guard Academy graduate. Great asset to the team. He is actually very active. We both attend all, if not almost all meetings. We have Jeremy as our YP. Slide. We have 3 reports recently published of great importance. Of course, the small hydropower plants is prolific in the U.S. as well as in the European quarters. So there was interest from quite a bit of people in this report. We're real happy it came out. The saltwater intrusion, you saw several of the U.S. members. We had a presentation from our laboratories. We've done quite a bit of modeling in this topic area for decades now. So it was good to bring that to the fold. It was actually very important interest from the chair himself. The chair is Philippe Rigo. He is from Belgium. If anybody knows Philippe, he is gung-ho, all in. That's why this commission is so active and so prolific. Next slide, please. We have 16 working groups. I am not going to read the 16 list, but I will tell you that we have representation. We have 4 leads of the 16 are U.S. chairs. So that goes against a policy of PIANC USA having at least 20% chairs in the commission, and the working groups. They're really doing well. I serve obviously as their link in my role, but one of the things that Philippe has done in this commission is he also pairs members, principal members of countries to working groups directly. So I don't only have the ones that U.S. may be chairing, I'm also the link to the commission to at least 4 more working groups. He does that to maintain connection directly to the commission so we can report up in our regular meetings. This is really important. For example, we are the lead because of some of the things that we're doing in the U.S. And I'm going to highlight just 2 here. The corrosion mitigation for hydraulic structures, that is huge in the U.S. Obviously, the Army has been funding a lot of this because it's a multi-billion-dollar issue for the Army. So that we're leveraging what we're doing in the Army into the civil works side. And our lead researcher in this, Rebecca Wilson, has been just taking this on because it hasn't been as active with COVID from the other member countries, but the U.S. is leading the way. And the other one is the health monitoring of port and waterway infrastructure. This actually dates back for USAs in 2006 or so. We started doing structural health monitoring of our navigation waterways. So it's been really seen as a shining star out there for other member countries. Next slide, please. Again, very prolific, this commission, and there's a lot of these are actually in conjunction with other working groups, other commissions, as you heard before. Next slide. These newly formed ones, again, the U.S. taking a lead again on the sustainable management, on availability of fleet flow rivers. This one is, again, in conjunction with another commission. So this is the kind of work that we want to do. But I can't stress enough the importance to promulgate the value of Piank in the U.S. to have more members be part of these working groups. Yeah, great. We have 4 being led by the U.S., but that doesn't mean that we have a lot of representation in a lot of the working groups, because we do not. It's also a product of having 93 members in the U.S., right? So that's going to be shown in the amount of members that we have working in the working group. Next slide, please. That goes to my 3rd bullet there, more participation. But income, as you saw, is highly productive. We got 3 publications right now out there now. We are part of we're giving contributions to the Piank yearbook coming up. And some of the future events, we do have a meeting in Strasbourg, which I will attend only virtually. We know about the Smart Rivers was being already pushed back. I will try to attend virtually, as I mentioned in the commissioners meeting. And then we got a couple other things that we're tracking as well. Again, very active. Smart Rivers is also a big item for us in 2024, 25 that we're tracking as well. And if it happens in the U.S., even a bigger role for myself and the PIANC USA commissioners. That's it.
Okay, we are running a little behind schedule, not a lot, but a little bit. So we have our one more presentation by Matt McCarthy on the young professionals. However, before we go to that, I'm going to ask Mr. Connor to come up and give some closing comments. I understand he has a flight that's based on us ending on time. So, sir, your thoughts.
Thank you for allowing me to interrupt the working group's presentation. I will be brief, not because that's my forte, but because I need to run. I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, for allowing me to participate in the annual meeting and this morning's meeting of commissioners. What struck me different from this afternoon, I just want to give some quick perspective that dawned upon me in this afternoon's meeting was basically great minds. Everything I said from my presentation earlier about how I saw Piank's alignment with the priorities that we have as an administration, the priorities that we have for Army Civil Works, as I think, just ratified by the discussion this afternoon as we get into details and from a high level about what the organization is trying to accomplish to the work that you're doing. Well, it just all struck me as very similar issues that we're dealing with, even not just with respect to the organization as it applies to the navigation and waterborne commerce, but things that we're struggling with in an evolving era where things are changing overall. So first of all, the presentation by Mr. Leffler focusing on resilience and particularly what Piank International is doing from a climate change perspective and dealing with the risks as well as the need for resilience, but also the root cause of climate change was very impressive. So I think there's great alignment from that perspective. In the roundtable, talking about the issues, basically trying to understand communities' needs, the role of Piank in listening and kind of customizing an agenda to deal with those issues based on that, whether it's reconciling large commercial operations to recreational issues. I thought that was incredibly interesting. But basically, how should Piank evolve as an institution based on understanding communities' needs? I'm trying to work this into every talk that I give because I just love General Graham's reference to a conversation we had one day to the things that the Corps of Engineers being asked to do. It's new, weird, and different. That's our role these days. Everything's this, trying to work with communities to address the needs that they have, whether it's navigation, whether it's flood risk management, whether it's coastal surge and flood and damage, protection from damages from storm surges, or even in the areas of water supply, recreation, everything is changing. And we always work with local partners, stakeholders, and they're asking us to do different things. And it's hard and it's weird, but that's what is needed in this day and age as things are evolving. So I really appreciated that roundtable discussion. And last, the working groups actually makes me want to kind of go back and be an engineer because a lot of the very detailed work, publications that are being put together resonated on so many levels, whether it's natural nature-based features integrated into the overall mission. That's an example of a lot of things that just struck me as in line completely with the Corps of Engineers issues that we're looking at with respect to specific projects, or like natural and nature-based infrastructure, we're looking at trying to take to a next level. So everything I heard this afternoon was just a validation of the importance of this organization, the work that you do. And that's my wrap up. And I appreciate your time and attention and the great work that you're doing. Appreciate it.
We have one more presentation of a commission that we'll cover, and that goes to Pat McCarthy, and it's the USA Young Professionals of YPCOM. So with that, Matt, are you online?
I sure am. How do I sound?
You sound well. So with that, I'll
Terrific.
turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. And yeah, it's been an exciting afternoon full of great content. You're just about at time, so I'll zip through this. So Matt McCarty here. I'm based out of the New York area, the principal YPCom rep for the U.S. I work for marine engineering consultancy, McLaren Engineering. And so we'll right now just give a quick recap of the past year with our young professionals group and moving ahead, some of the things we're excited about. And really our mission is integrating the young professionals into the wider community and wider workforces, especially in regards to working groups and then additional just technical knowledge transfer and networking and such. So next slide. So I'm supported by a great YPCom group. Right now it's myself, Matt McCarty, Nick Stefani with Edgewater Resources out of Wisconsin, Nicole Pauly with Moffett Nickel out of Florida, and Robert Creel out of Georgia. You can see on the map here, we're clustered a little bit on the East Coast and the Great Lakes right now. Historically, we've made it a mission to try to cover all 4 coasts with our groups, and we've kind of identified the need to integrate additional participants within our group, or at least within our network, to better represent the West Coast and the Gulf. And it's something that we're proceeding with doing now. And I encourage, I'm going to say it several times here, encouraging new blood, new volunteers. But if you're from those areas, all the better. So next slide. So 2021, we've heard it. It's been kind of a common theme here, how we've kind of all, for lack of a better word, struggled through COVID. It's presented a number of difficulties with us and transferring to a pretty much purely digital content or digital events. But some of the things that we managed to accomplish with COVID in 2021, we continued on with our monthly planning meetings within our group. We hosted a number of technical webinars. A lot of these were tied into the DePop Williams Award, which was presented last year on tsunami resilience, mooring load updates, the sand motor mega nourishment project in the Netherlands, and breakwater modeling case studies here in the Great Lakes areas. We're going to talk about it more in a moment, but the biannual technical visit planning has been a huge initiative for us and is going to continue to be. And getting into the details of that with Port Everglades and sponsors and activities and tours has been excellent so far, and we're really excited about it. So next slide. So moving forward in 2022, I just mentioned the BTV preparation. We're about a year out, and things are really getting serious now. We've got a lot more work to do, and commitments and logistical planning, as well as engaging sponsors and other local stakeholders. The Ports 22 conference coming up in September, we've been liaising with the YP committee for that group and assisting with some of the local coordination for a number of young professional events at that Ports and Engineering Conference. I believe there are 4 events tailored towards young professionals at that conference, which will be a record. It'll be really great content for us. We've been working on an inventory of YP participation in working groups, and always trying to grow that, especially on our end. And then finally, something I am super excited about, and lots of us are, is really returning to more of the in-person content that I've really grown to love with Piank. And our kind of the recipe we really love is the technical tours or hands-on combined with happy hour or networking, and it's really, I've never heard anything bad about it. So we've got a number of events in the works up in the Northeast. We're looking at putting on a Fender design seminar probably within the next 2 months. It'll either be in the New York area or up in Rhode Island. The East Midtown Greenway construction project, a technical tour later on this summer. We're looking probably in the next 3 months to do a technical workshop in Houston on piling and marine combination wall construction, as well as a pile fabrication construction tour and happy hour event, and a number of other tours and happy hours associated with it. And so we're just super excited about that, and looking to host at least one of those events kind of in every major region we have, every major coast coming up this late spring or summer, especially kind of gearing up awareness for the big BTV coming up in April. So next slide. And so the BTV will biannual technical visit. We'll dig into it a little more here. Again, as you've been hearing, it's tied in with our PIANK America conference in April of 2023. Zooming out a little bit, the biannual technical visit is a tradition within PIANK International. It's a young professional event held every other year in non-COVID times. It's been a few years at this point, but it's really focusing on hands-on activities and bringing in people from across the globe and seeing how the local engineers and local practitioners are solving the engineering challenges in their part of the world, and seeing how people do engineering on the opposite side of the globe. So I've been very fortunate. I've been able to attend the events in Singapore, in Cairns, Australia, in Ghent, Belgium in previous years, and they've really been once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. And now it's the United States' turn to put on this event. So we've got some pretty big shoes to fill and pretty high expectations in the international community. And it's meant to be, and one of the other things I'm very proud of for Piank for hosting this event, for young professionals, it's meant to be a very low-cost event. And essentially, if you're a young professional working in another country on the opposite side of the globe, if you can get here, it'll be a very low-cost event for you. Registration is highly subsidized. Typically, we'll work with you to find low-cost housing and match you up, but to make it accessible for as many people as we can. So diving into our plans for Fort Lauderdale specifically, we've already got a number of construction tours and port tours lined up with Port Everglades. They've been expanding and have a number of initiatives underway. We also have lines into Port Miami to try to get down there for a day. I spoke with their chief engineer about it today, and it's all everyone down in South Florida is very excited about this event and seeing it in the South Florida area. And then just one other tour we're excited about, the F3 dry stack storage facility, which is really from a more recreational standpoint, really game changers as far as recreational boating and recreational marinas are concerned in that part of the world, and they're really leading the way down there. And then a number of networking opportunities and chances to exchange knowledge with our colleagues across the world. So again, really excited about it. A year off, lots left to do. Always looking for volunteers. So next slide. And so finally, looking for volunteers. This is our the get involved slide. We're happy to have you no matter where you are located in the U.S. We always have a need, and again, working up to the BTV, many hands make for light work, and so we're always looking for help. I mentioned some of the events we already have planned in the Northeast and in Houston coming up. We're looking to do those on every coast, more regional events. And if you're willing or interested in helping to facilitate one of those, or have a cool project that's under construction or near construction that we can tour, again, we're super interested to talk to you and hear about it. So with that in mind, myself, I'm happy to talk to you. Any one of our board members, their emails are below. If you want to take a screenshot of it, give me a call, shoot us an email, and we can find a place for you to help. And so we're happy to talk. With that, that'll conclude our YP remarks, and we'll turn it back to you, Joe.
Thank you, Matt. Well done. A very interesting program that you have ongoing. So thank you very much. That brings us to a close of our 2022 annual meeting. I appreciate everybody's participation. I hope that you learned something new and unusual in the course of the discussions. I always learn something every time I hear from all the different commissions of all the range of things that people are involved with. I would ask before we sign everybody off that we capture anything in the chat and save it. So, okay, we're a little bit over time, but not too bad. So I'm going to thank everybody for your participation and cooperation to keep everything on schedule. And I want to thank you for your time today. For those who are leaving and departing the area, safe travels. For those of you online, I hope everything's going well and safely for you. So with that, thank you and have a great day.